In the sleepy town of Hartwell, West Virginia, where the mountains cast long shadows over modest homes and everyone claimed to know their neighbors, secrets had a way of staying buried. Until they didn't. July 2, 2000 began like any summer Sunday, humid air clinging to skin, cicadas droning from the trees lining Route 9, church bells echoing across town. For 10-year-old Dylan Creighton, it was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon returning home from his grandparents' farm. Instead, at 5:34 p.m., his childhood ended with a scream that neighbors would later describe as something between terror and grief. The kind that changes a place forever. Dylan had found his mother, 41-year-old Melissa Creighton, collapsed beside an overturned pot of stew, a single knife wound in her back. Steam still rose from the spilled food, suggesting the attack had happened minutes before his arrival. The back door stood unlocked, the screen door gently tapping against the frame in the summer breeze. "Mom," he had called, dropping his backpack in the hallway. "I'm home early." Grandpa had to. The memory of what came next would haunt him for decades. Officer Thomas Reeves was first on the scene, responding to a frantic 911 call. As a 20-year veteran of Hartwell's small police force, he'd handled domestic disputes, drunk drivers, even the occasional robbery. But murder was different. Especially in Hartwell. Especially Melissa Creighton. "I knew her," Reeves later told detectives. "Everyone did. Checked out my kids' library books every summer. Made the best apple pies for the firehouse fundraiser. Single mom, worked hard. No enemies that anyone knew of." But that was before they found the box. Detective Sandra Holder arrived from the county sheriff's office within the hour. Middle-aged with prematurely silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, Holder had grown up 30 miles away before spending 15 years with Baltimore homicide. When budget cuts sent her back to West Virginia, she'd thought she was leaving the worst behind. "First thing that struck me," Holder would later write in her case notes, "was how normal everything looked. Family photos on the refrigerator. Half-finished grocery list magnetized next to them. Stack of library books on the counter. Nothing suggested violence until you saw her body and the blood pooling on the linoleum." As paramedics pronounced Melissa dead at the scene, Holder began methodically processing what she found, or rather, what she didn't find. No signs of forced entry. Nothing apparently stolen. No struggle evident beyond the overturned pot. A single, expertly placed stab wound suggested someone who knew what they were doing. Whoever did this, she told Officer Reeves that evening, either got incredibly lucky or knew exactly how to kill efficiently. The mystery deepened as Dylan, still in shock but trying desperately to help, revealed that his mother had acted strangely in recent months. Hushed phone calls that ended when he entered a room. Unexplained absences she attributed to extra shifts at the library. She seemed worried sometimes, he told Detective Holder, his small hands clutching a glass of water that a victim services volunteer had given him. "But then she'd see me watching and smile real big, like everything was fine." The town of Hartwell closed ranks around Dylan. His maternal grandparents took him in, neighbors brought casseroles, and the local church organized a memorial service that filled every pew. Melissa was remembered as devoted, kind, and unassuming, the last person anyone would want to hurt, according to Reverend Marshall's eulogy. But as Detective Holder dug deeper, cracks appeared in the portrait of the quiet librarian. Bank records revealed monthly cash deposits of $1,500 to $2,000 over the past year, substantial sums for someone earning a librarian's modest salary. When questioned, Melissa's supervisor at Hartwell Public Library confirmed she hadn't worked any overtime and expressed surprise at hearing about extra shifts. Then, 3 days after the murder, Alice Winfield, Melissa's best friend since high school, came forward. Visibly uncomfortable, eyes red-rimmed from crying, she sat across from Detective Holder at the sheriff's substation. "Melissa mentioned a second income about 4 months ago," Alice admitted, twisting her wedding ring. "I asked if she'd gotten another job, but she just smiled and said, 'Not exactly. But it's letting me save for Dylan's college.'" Alice hesitated. When I pressed her, she said sometimes people pay for information, and she had access to plenty of that. What kind of information? Holder asked. She wouldn't say. Just that it wasn't anything illegal, but it wasn't something she could talk about, either. Alice's voice dropped. The last time we had coffee, about a week before it happened, she seemed nervous. Said she might have gotten in over her head, but that she was too close to stop now. Armed with a search warrant, Holder and 2 deputies returned to the Creighton home. While the kitchen remained sealed as the primary crime scene, they methodically worked through the rest of the modest 3-bedroom house. In Melissa's bedroom closet, beneath a stack of winter sweaters, they found a shoebox-sized metal container with a combination lock. Inside, a prepaid burner phone, a handwritten list of men's names, a printout of Pastor Michael Eckhart's sermon schedule from Covenant Fellowship Church, and $9,000 in $100 bills, bound with bank straps. The moment I saw that box, Holder later confided to her supervisor, I knew we weren't investigating a simple home invasion gone wrong. Melissa Creighton had secrets. The burner phone yielded calls to numbers in neighboring counties, including 17 late-night calls to one registered to Grant Purdy, a deacon at Covenant Fellowship, the very church whose pastor's schedule was found in Melissa's lockbox. Purdy, a well-respected businessman in his early 50s with silver at his temples and an expensive watch on his wrist, agreed to an interview at the station. His attorney sat silently beside him as Detective Holder recorded the conversation. Yes, I knew Melissa, Purdy admitted, his voice steady but his fingers tapping nervously against his thigh. We'd been seeing each other privately for about 14 months. Privately? Holder prodded. An affair, he clarified, glancing at his lawyer. My wife doesn't know. I'd appreciate discretion. Mr. Purdy, we're investigating a homicide, not managing your marital problems, Holder said. Phone records show you spoke with Ms. Creighton the night before her murder. Purdy nodded. She called me around 11. Seemed upset. Said she needed to talk about something important, but not over the phone. We agreed to meet that Sunday, the day she died, but I never made it there. He swallowed hard. I got cold feet, thought she might be planning to ask me to leave my wife. I turned around halfway there. Can anyone verify your whereabouts that afternoon? I told my wife I was meeting a building contractor about church renovations. I was actually just driving around, thinking. Stopped at the Sunoco off Highway 19 around 4:30. They might have me on camera. Detective Holder leaned forward. And the money? Our records show you've withdrawn over $30,000 in cash over the past year. I was helping her out, Purdy said defensively. She was raising a son alone on a librarian's salary. I cared about her. $30,000 is quite a bit of caring, Mr. Purdy. His attorney interjected, my client has been fully cooperative, detective. Unless you're charging him, we're done here. But just as Holder was preparing to follow up on Purdy's alibi, another player entered the investigation. Caleb Gant walked into the sheriff's office unannounced 5 days after the murder. Tall, graying at the temples, with the rigid posture of someone who once wore a uniform, he identified himself as a former police officer who'd been dismissed from the Bridgeton force in 1996 for asking too many questions about the wrong people. Melissa contacted me 8 months ago, Gant explained, declining coffee but accepting a seat in Holder's cramped office. Said she'd found some interesting connections while digitizing old county records at the library. Property seizures from 1994 to 97 that didn't match court documents. Names that appeared and then disappeared from official filings. Why would she bring this to you? Holder asked. Because my name was in those files, Gant said flatly. As the officer who objected to the seizures. 3 months after I filed my report, I was fired for conduct unbecoming after someone planted drug paraphernalia in my locker. Holder remained skeptical but intrigued. What exactly was Ms. Creighton doing with this information? Building a case. She had names, landowners who lost property, officers who performed questionable seizures, judges who signed off without proper procedure. Gant leaned forward. She found patterns, detective. Properties seized for minor violations, then purchased at auction for pennies on the dollar by shell companies, all leading back to a handful of investors. And you believe this is why she was killed? For days before her death, Melissa called me. Said she'd found something big, a connection between the seized properties and certain church leaders. Said, and I quote, "If I vanish, check the ones who walk with a Bible and a badge." 2 days later, she left a voicemail saying she was going to confront someone. That was the last I heard from her. Holder studied Gant's face for signs of deception but found none. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I don't know who to trust in this county, he replied. For all I know, whoever killed Melissa has friends in your department. The investigation split into parallel tracks. While one team verified Purdy's alibi, the gas station footage indeed showed him buying coffee at 4:37 p.m., giving him a tight but possible window to commit the murder. Another quietly looked into the property seizure allegations. Ancient county records, yellowing and often handwritten, revealed disturbing patterns. Between 1994 and 1997, 28 properties had been seized for minor code violations or tax discrepancies. 25 were purchased at auction by companies registered to the same law firm. The deeds eventually transferred to a development company partially owned by, among others, Grant Purdy. When confronted with this information, Purdy's composure cracked. "This is not what it looks like," he insisted. "Yes, I invested in those properties, but I had no idea how they were acquired. That was all handled by the development group's manager, Edward Simmons. The same Edward Simmons who serves as treasurer at your church?" Holder asked. "Yes, but..." "And the same Edward Simmons whose name appears on Melissa Creighton's list?" Purdy fell silent. The case seemed to be building when a startling development shifted its direction. Edward Simmons was found dead in his garage, apparently from carbon monoxide poisoning. The medical examiner ruled it suicide, noting a handwritten note apologizing to his family for the disgrace that's coming. With Simmons dead and evidence circumstantial, the investigation stalled. While few doubted there was a connection between Melissa's discoveries and her murder, proving it became increasingly difficult as suspects closed ranks and witnesses became forgetful. 7 months after the murder, Detective Holder was reassigned. The case remained open but inactive, another file in a growing cabinet of unsolved mysteries. Dylan Creighton grew into a solemn, determined young man. His grandparents used Melissa's life insurance to send him to college, where he studied criminal justice before attending law school. He kept his mother's photograph on his desk during late-night study sessions, a silent promise that someday he would find answers. In 2008, 8 years after Melissa's death, a routine maintenance crew arrived at her former home, long since sold to a young family, to fix a persistent plumbing issue. While working beneath the house, a plumber discovered a small crawlspace that had been sealed with plywood and hidden behind insulation. Inside was a rusted cookie tin containing a voice recorder, several cassette tapes wrapped in plastic, and a journal entry dated June 28, 2000, 4 days before Melissa's murder. He said no one would believe me. That I'm just a librarian with secrets. But I have it all now, the names, the dates, the signatures. Every property, every bribe, every judge who looked the other way. He doesn't know I recorded our conversation. My insurance policy, in case something happens to me. Because if they'd ruin people's lives over land, what wouldn't they do to keep it quiet? The district attorney ordered the audio tapes restored by forensic technicians. Though damaged by moisture, portions were recoverable. In one recording, Melissa could be heard confronting a man whose voice trembled with anger. "I trusted you," the male voice said. "We had an arrangement." "That was before I knew who was really getting hurt," Melissa responded. Elderly people losing homes they'd lived in for generations. Families on the street. "You can't expect me to stay quiet about that." "You've been well compensated for your discretion," the man countered. Blood money, Melissa shot back. And not nearly enough to buy my conscience. Think about your son, the voice warned. About his future. Walk away from this, Melissa. No one will believe you anyway. You're just a librarian with secrets, she finished. Yes, you've said that. But librarians are very good at keeping records, and very bad at destroying them. A prolonged silence followed, then, if those records ever surface, you'll regret it. Are you threatening me? Melissa asked, her voice remarkably steady. I'm promising you consequences, came the reply. Despite extensive analysis, the voice was never conclusively identified. The quality was too poor, the ambient noise too distracting. But those who knew Grant Purdy noted similarities in cadence and word choice, while others pointed to different suspects, including a judge implicated in the property scandals. To this day, Melissa Creighton's murder remains officially unsolved. Grant Purdy still serves as deacon at Covenant Fellowship, though rumors and sideways glances have followed him since the investigation. Edward Simmons' supposed suicide raised more questions than it answered, with some suggesting his death was too convenient to be self-inflicted. Dylan Creighton, now an attorney specializing in property law, has never stopped searching for the truth. He keeps his mother's files, those released to him by the sheriff's department, in a fireproof safe in his office. Every year on the anniversary of her death, he submits a formal request to reopen the investigation. Someone in this town knows what happened to my mother, he told a local reporter on the 20th anniversary of the murder. And I want them to know I'm not going away, and neither is the truth. The house off Route 9 has long been sold, renovated, and sold again. But locals swear that on summer evenings, particularly in July, lights flicker in the kitchen window around 5:30 p.m., just after the time when a pot of stew boiled over and a young boy found his world shattered. Some say it's just an electrical quirk of an old house. Others believe it's Melissa, still trying to tell her story. But Detective Sandra Holder, now retired and living in Florida, has a different theory. Guilt, she said, when contacted for a retrospective on the case. In small towns, secrets don't die, they simmer. Whoever killed Melissa Creighton has had to live with it every day for over 20 years. They've had to attend community functions, church services, grocery shop and gas up alongside people who loved her. That kind of guilt leaves a mark on a soul. It flickers, like those lights people claim to see. She paused, then added, the case isn't cold, it's waiting. All we need is one person willing to finally speak the truth. In a forgotten corner of the Hartwell Public Library, the archive room where Melissa once worked remains largely unchanged. Modern computers have replaced the old terminals, but the files she meticulously organized still line the shelves. Among them, lost in plain sight, a thumb drive was discovered during a system upgrade in 2019, labeled simply, Insurance, in Melissa's handwriting. By the time IT staff realized its significance, the drive had been misplaced again, another piece of the puzzle sliding just beyond reach. Just like the truth about what really happened to the librarian who knew too much. The stew pot from that fateful day sits in an evidence locker at the county sheriff's office. The knife that killed Melissa Creighton has never been found. And somewhere in Hartwell, someone carries the weight of a secret that grows heavier with each passing year. They say time reveals all truths. In the case of Melissa Creighton, time has revealed only more questions, more whispers, more possibilities. But for those who remember her, especially a boy who became a man with a mission, the flickering light in that kitchen window serves as a reminder. Some mysteries refuse to remain buried. Some secrets demand to be told. And sometimes, justice arrives not with the swift blow of a gavel, but with the slow, steady persistence of those left behind to seek it. As Dylan Creighton recently told his law students when discussing cold cases, evidence can disappear. Witnesses can forget. But the truth doesn't expire. It waits for the right moment, the right person, to finally bring it into the light. And in Hartwell, West Virginia, many believe that moment is coming. Soon.